A boy has the power to talk to dead souls around him, but several mysterious monsters from the underworld want his power. Will he succeed in killing the enemies, or will the monsters prevail? Let's find out today on Anime Recaps. We will be covering the first 4 episodes of the series Bleach. The series starts with a look at a world of darkness, and 2 blobs of shadow rise from the shade before bursting in the nighttime. A young woman dressed in a black kimono flies towards a full moon and senses a strong pulse. She jumps to another telephone pole before leaping toward the town below. A message then appears, and so the sword of fate has fallen. Elsewhere, an orange-haired high school student fights brutally with a couple of skateboarding teenagers for knocking down a flower vase at a young girl's death place. The bullies scream in terror and run away after apologizing to him. The student picks up the broken vase while promising the spirit of the young girl who had died that he'll bring flowers the following day before the girl fades from view. On his way home, the student begins to outline his life. He is Ichigo Kurosaki, a 15-year-old teenager. His family runs a clinic, and he admits that he can see spirits for as long as he can remember. Upon entering his home, Ichigo announces his arrival only to be greeted by his father, Isshin Kurosaki, with a kick to his face. His father reprimands him for being late for dinner as always. This prompts Ichigo to ask if this is how he treats his son, who just risked his life to help a spirit. While the argument continues, Ichigo's sisters, Yuza and Karen, are seated at the table having dinner. Karen mockingly points out that her brother has a new spirit friend, to which Ichigo says that no matter how much he tries to get rid of them, they just keep coming back. Meanwhile, Yuzu expresses her jealousy of Ichigo and Karen's ability to see spirits, while she can only barely sense them. Tired of fighting his father, Ichigo heads to his room rather than having dinner. The following morning, while preparing his breakfast, Ichigo notices a news report about a nearby accident. Afterwards, he goes to the dead girl's memorial site with fresh flowers. But he suddenly hears her scream and rushes to find her being chased by a giant monster. As the two try to flee the monster, the woman in a black kimono appears and wields her katana towards it, cutting its body from head to bottom. She then disappears before Ichigo can talk to her. Later that night, Ichigo finds himself wondering who that woman is. Suddenly, the same woman from before appears in his room. She steps down to the floor and notes that it is close, only to be interrupted by Ichigo's horrified kick. He demands to know what she is talking about. The woman is stunned to find that Ichigo can see her and proceeds to introduce herself as Shinigami, guardian of the soul sent from Soul Society to kill demons like the one from earlier. She explains that the Soul Society is where most souls live, along with Shinigamis. Meanwhile, a monster once again chases the dead girl's spirit. Ichigo doesn't believe the Shinigami, and as a result, she uses a spell to bind him to prove who she is. She then explains to Ichigo about Soul Society and the 2 kinds of monsters. The good ones are called pluses, while the bad ones they encounter are hollows. She adds that something has been hampering her senses, so she cannot locate a hollow roaming around the area. However, moments later, the Shinigami notices its presence. Elsewhere, the hollow begins marching towards Ichigo's home, causing the windows nearby to explode. In the next scene, an injured Yuzu informs Ichigo about the hollow and how he has their younger sister Karen captive before falling unconscious in the hall. As the hollow grips Karen, the Shinigami draws her sword while Ichigo falls down the stairs behind her. Ichigo manages to break free from the binding spell he was under after seeing his younger sister in danger. The Shinigami is left in shock since a human like Ichigo has been able to break through a spell with his own power. He then begins screaming in anger and attacks the hollow, but to no avail. The monster goes after him, but the Shinigami manages to injure it. However, she too is hurt during the process. She then advises Ichigo to become a Shinigami himself by piercing her sword through his chest so that he can save his family. While she finally tells him that her name is Rukia Kuchiki, Ichigo stabs himself with the sword, later turning into a Shinigami himself. He defeats the hollow, leaving Rukia amazed at how he took almost all of her power and broke a binding spell on his own. The following morning, Isshin Kurosaki attacks his son to wake him up, only for Ichigo to scream in anger. After his initial reaction, Ichigo asks about his 2 sisters, recalling last night's incident. Surprisingly, his father is confused and wonders what he's talking about. Isshin then takes Ichigo, where a truck crashed into their house last night, and is thankful that no one got hurt. Meanwhile, his sisters don't seem to remember the incident. A stunned Ichigo wonders if Rukia has altered their memories. At Kakuruka High School, Ichigo bumps into 2 of his classmates, Orihime and Tatsuki. and the trio has a very awkward moment. In class, Ichigo shares his truck incident with his friends Kaigo, Matsuro, and Saido. Suddenly, he is greeted by a new transfer student who, to his surprise, is none other than Rukia Kuchiki. Later, Ichigo confronts Rukia, and the later mentions that she can't return to the Soul Society as she no longer has enough power, recalling that he took nearly all of it. As a result, she wants Ichigo to perform her Shinigami duties until her powers return and asserts that he doesn't have the right to refuse. However, Ichigo reaffirms that he doesn't want to fight Hollows ever again. Enraged, Rukia decides to take matters into her own hands and forcefully removes Ichigo's soul from his body. While Ichigo freaks out over seeing his own body lying on the ground, Rukia demands him to come with her. They then arrive at a playground where a Hollow is chasing a boy. As the boy cries for help, Ichigo attempts to save him, but Rukia comments that if he saves the soul spirit, then he must commit himself to protecting all souls. Ichigo defeats the Hollow by stabbing his face and then performs Kanzo, a process to send pluses to the Soul Society, causing the boy to disappear in blue light. Rukia compliments his Kanzo skill, but Ichigo takes off without saying a word. Later that night, Orihime's deceased brother, Sora Inoue, watches Orihime through her window, but some Hollows suddenly appear from behind and take him away to their underworld. There, the Hollows convert the spirit into a Hollow as well. The following day, while walking down the street, Ichigo and Rukia notice Orihime, who has just been hit by a car. Although she looks fine, Rukia notices a mark on Orihime's leg. Ichigo then offers to walk her home, but she grabs her stuff and leaves. Meanwhile, Rukia is suspicious of the mark and asks Ichigo how he knows about Orihime. He shares that Orihime's brother died 3 years ago at his family clinic. Rukia wants to know more, so she decides to leave. When Ichigo asks her where she's going, she doesn't clarify and instead takes off. Later that night, Tatsuki brings over some food for Orihime. While at Ichigo's home, Yuzu asks him whether he has seen her pajamas. Ichigo nags why she has to question everything to him, only prompting Yuzu to bid him good night as she closes the door. Suddenly, he hears a strange beeping sound coming from his closet. He finds Rukia in his sister's pajamas when the closet door is thrown open. She then informs that they have received a Hollow alert before shoving Ichigo's soul out of his body. Just then, a Hollow appears in Ichigo's room and a battle between the two begins. The Hollow runs off when a small piece of his mask is broken while Ichigo remains speechless. He tells Rukia that the Hollow was none other than Orihime's dead brother, Sora. Rukia then explains that pluses or good spirits who hold on to grudges and regrets for so long can become Hollows on their own or get devoured by other Hollows, turning them into new ones. Back at Orihime's place, Orihime tells Tatsuki about her encounter with Ichigo and Rukia the other day. Just then, they hear a bang and a loud roar outside. Meanwhile, Ichigo and Rukia conclude that Sora's Hollow is after his sister, since Hollows attack those closest to them when they are alive, so they head to Orihime's place. Elsewhere, the Hollow enters Orihime's apartment and knocks her down while Tatsuki tries to fight it off. When she gains consciousness, Orihime notices that she has been chained. The Hollow desperately calls out her name, but she asks how he knows her name, which only makes the Hollow attack her. Ichigo finally shows up and drives the Hollow away, only to reappear and grab Orihime by her chain. Orihime looks into the Hollow's eyes and finds that it's her brother. She affirms that her brother would never act like that, to which Sora replies that his spirit was lonely and blames her for forgetting about him when she befriended Tatsuki. He further accuses his sister that she is the reason why he ended up as such and tries to choke her to death. Ichigo immediately intervenes, slicing one of Sora's arms and telling him that the reason big brothers are born is so they can protect their younger siblings, not kill them. When Sora notices the hairpins he once gave Orihime, he recalls the memories of when she was younger, but he soon rams his head against the wall and attacks his sister again. Ichigo comes to the rescue once more, but when he readies for the final blow, Orihime intervenes. She then apologizes to her brother for begging him not to leave when he died, and tells him that she knew he would always be by her side. Orihime adds that she had moved on from his death so that he could be happy. This revelation causes the spirit of her brother to have an inner struggle with his Hollow. And finally, Sora manages to regain control of himself. Trying to use the last moments of his sane mind, Sora grabs Ichigo's sword and attempts to kill himself. However, an injured Orihime reminds his brother of the last time they spoke, and tells him something she should have said that day before he left. "Have a nice day," to which he responds, "I'm going now." The next day at school, Ichigo realizes Orihime doesn't remember anything from the night and asks Rukia if she had done anything to her. She responds that it was a memory modifier to keep the humans from knowing about the Soul Society. Ichigo finally informs Rukia that he wants to help her with her work as a Shinigami. Meanwhile, at a construction site, Sado, one of Ichigo's classmates, hangs out with his friends. One of his friends has a parakeet and shares that the bird has all its previous owners killed. Soon afterwards, the parakeet begins to shriek and flap its wings when a large beam falls off toward the three teenagers. Sado immediately springs into action and catches the falling beam on his shoulders. In the meantime, a hollow talks about consuming souls, claiming that Shinigami souls are the most delicious. Back at the construction site, the parakeet thanks Sado for saving him and identifies himself as Yuichi Shibata. His friends are fascinated by seeing the bird talk like a real person and suggest Sado take the bird with him. In the following scene on the roof of their high school, Ichigo is surprised to find his wound healing quickly after the fight at Orihime's house. Rukia brags that she was among the best in her combat class, which made healing Ichigo easy since he now has her power. Just then, one of Ichigo's friends, Mitsuru, comes over and teases them for acting like a couple since they're always together. Kaigo and Sado with his parakeet also join with their lunch, while the former is fascinated that they now have a girl in their group. Seeing Sado's bandages, Ichigo asks if he is injured, prompting Sado to explain his beam incident. Kaigo then asks where Sado got the bird, and the bird introduces himself. Meanwhile, Ichigo and Rukia notice something suspicious about the bird. Sado clarifies that one of his friends gave him the bird. Rukia tells Ichigo that whatever is inside the talking parakeet might not be evil and is likely just a lonely plus. She then wants Ichigo to perform Kanzo on it tonight, but he complains about having another sleepless night. That evening, when Ichigo arrives at his family clinic, Yuzu informs him that there was a big car accident nearby. It turns out that Sado, who is still carrying his caged bird, has been heavily wounded. While analyzing Sado's wound, Isen sees a large claw-shaped injury on his back. After losing so much blood, Sado falls unconscious on the ground, so Isen lays him on a bed. In the meantime, Ichigo senses something strange and asks Rukia if she felt it too. Later that night, she tells him she could sense it in the other room, revealing that it reeked of a hollow. The following morning, Ichigo finds that Karen isn't feeling so well. Isen bursts in and informs that Sado is missing. Rukia inquires with Ichigo if he has any idea where Sado would be. He says no, but notes that a hollow might be searching for Sado to eat his soul. Meanwhile, Sado sits with his bird at a construction site, and his bird tells him that his previous owners have had bad luck. The bird then suggests he abandon him as Sado is in danger, but since Sado already has a soft spot for his new pet, he denies it. It turns out that a hollow has actually been chasing Sado. It reaches where Sado is staying and jumps down, prompting him to run away with the bird. Ichigo and Rukia finally see Sado, but they're interrupted by Karen. She calls her brother, who asks what she's doing there. Rukia suggests Ichigo take her home while she handles the hollow. Next, Ichigo carries Karen and assures her that she'll be fine. She tells him that the boy in the form of a parakeet has been through a lot of pain and that his mother was murdered. Unfortunately, the hollow gets to Rukia and holds her leg, saying she smells delicious. Fortunately, she manages to free herself and the hollow notes that she's tougher than he thought. She then swings around onto his back, jumps off into the air, and chants a spell declaring that she got her powers back. Although the parakeet suggests an injured Sado not help Rukia, he goes anyway before asking him to stay put. Back at the fighting scene, the hollow knows by the spell that Rukia is a Shinigami. Since the spell doesn't work, the hollow mocks her while she realizes that her powers haven't returned yet. He then threatens Rukia to take a nibble of her soul, but she only calls him hollow scum, and the hollow breaks his evil laugh.